I am a transgender woman. I'm now a cat.
Meow.
I am now non-binary.
Today is a day that ends in Y, so people over on TikTok are losing their minds. We're going to react to more insane woke TikToks in this bonus episode of the Brad versus Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our media, and our politics, all from an independent perspective. Sometimes I do these bonus videos on the weekends where I react to insane TikToks because you guys are a little sick in the head and you enjoy watching me suffer. So up first, we're going to listen to perhaps the most incoherent rant from a trans activist on TikTok that I have ever heard. And boy, that's saying something. Buckle up and get ready to get slightly dumber as we take a listen.
I am a transgender woman. I'm now a cat.
Meow.
I am now non-binary. And now I am a trans woman again. Did you notice how I didn't explode? Gender is whatever the you want it to be. This rock is gender. That's actually non-binary. There are as many genders as there are people in the world. So when people say that I can't change my gender, they don't know that in this conversation that I'm currently having with you, I have already switched to non-binary. The same way that my pronouns are now they, them. Although trans women's pronouns already become they, them if somebody doesn't like them. And in that bit, they changed to she, her. And while they changed to she, her, I'm now a trans woman again. Pronouns do not correlate to gender at all. It's just how you want to be referred to, like your name. And your name does not correlate to your gender, unless you're non-binary. So if your name doesn't correlate to your gender, then your pronouns also don't correlate to your gender. Your identity is something that you have complete control over and you can do whatever you want with. Oh, so if I wanted to say I'm a cyclops, would you let me? Yes. Do what you want. Gender is a social construct. Do whatever the you want with it.
I mean, are you trying to make the LGBT community look like a joke? Are you trying to lose rights? Like, I really don't know what to tell you. Because if you were trying to convince people that this entire community was insane, then you're doing amazing. Other than that, I mean, this just did not hit the way that you hoped it hit, my friend. I mean, you don't seem to realize this. Lots of these kinds of radical trans activist types don't seem to realize this. But if gender means everything, then it also means nothing. And if your gender can fluctuate 3 times in the space of 30 seconds, you should probably seek help first and foremost. But 2, then it's not actually an inherent or meaningful part of who you are, your gender identity, that has to be respected. You see that, right? Like, the math here is not mathing. And the other problem is that in this kind of argument, they're making a distinction between gender and biological sex, where they argue gender is how you feel or the role you play in society or whatever. They basically mean like your personality. And even then, I would say if your personality is switching 3 times in the space of a 60-second TikTok video, that's probably an issue you should discuss with a medical professional. But regardless, a lot of people don't accept that distinction. They don't accept the idea of gender as personality and just view gender as a synonym for biological sex, which can't change and can't fluctuate 30 times in a span of 60 seconds. It can't change at all. It's an immutable biological reality. And then there's just a layer of incoherence to this video that I found amusing. Like, pronouns do not correlate to gender. What? Then why are y'all so pressed if people don't use your pronouns and they're invalidating your gender identity? I thought do they matter so much that misgendering someone is cruel and mean, or do they not correlate to gender? Y'all are going to have to make your minds up because it can't be both, at least not if your goal is to make any sense at all. Like, what? And the same thing with the name. Your name does not correlate to your gender. Oh, well, that's news to me because trans activists have said you can't use their old name. That's dead naming and that invalidates their identity. But here you are saying it doesn't correspond to their gender. So I can't keep up. And I am not the only one. Seriously, most normal Americans are never going to understand this radical gender ideology that this person is espousing. And allowing it to be conflated with my rights as a gay man is one of the biggest strategic and political errors of modern history, really. It really is. I mean, these people are essentially, you could almost call them identity anarchists. And the position that they take is laughable. Your identity is something you have complete control over and can do whatever you want. Obviously, that's not true. Would this person be fine with people identifying as black when they are, in fact, white? Something tells me they're not. Like, you cannot just have an unlimited right to identify as whatever you want. Objective reality does still exist. Now, I have never really had any problem treating trans people who just have gender dysphoria and want to live as if they are the opposite sex, but don't literally think they are, treating them how they want to be treated because they have, a unique medical condition, and that's what will alleviate it, has really never been any skin off my back. It's something I'm okay with, and I think a lot of people are. But when you ask us to deny reality or pretend that people can self-identify as whatever they want and it's perfectly valid, that's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So I don't know, this kind of ideology, and it's not just some random TikToker, this kind of identity anarchism or gender ideology is embedded in the core of the LGBT activist movement, the groups, the nonprofits, the rhetoric, and it is incoherent and self-destructive beyond belief. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button while you're at it. Make sure you're subscribed. Remember, you can tune into the Brad versus Everyone podcast on audio podcasts as well. We're on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. So do consider subscribing over there. And up next, we've got a helpful lesson for us pesky gay men who are still heteronormative. Let's take a listen.
Fun fact, you can be homosexual and heteronormative at the same damn time. Pete Buttigieg is a great example.
So I actually kind of agree with this TikTok. I just don't agree that it's a bad thing. So heteronormative has always been one of the sillier woke terms to me because the definition, if you look it up, denoting or relating to a worldview that promotes heterosexuality as the normal or preferred sexual orientation. Now, I don't know about preferred. I think it's fine for people to be gay, obviously. Though I do acknowledge, be in trouble if everyone was gay, because we do need heterosexual people to biologically reproduce. However, the idea that it's bad to view heterosexuality as the norm has never, and that's like problematic from the woke perspective, has never made any sense to me because it literally just is the norm. It's like most people. That's the definition of the norm. And yet, with this particular rhetorical twist and accusation, they seek to portray gay people who acknowledge reality as inherently problematic. And that is absolutely wild to me. Like, I know y'all are on your Delulu Island and living in Fantasyland, but those of us who choose not to join you are not, somehow traitors or bad or evil. Like, I simply do not agree with this. But apparently, the the alphabet people, the Wi-Fi password community on TikTok, they really are not in touch with average opinion or common sense at all, at least a lot of them. And this next video makes that crystal clear.
No, there are no serious concerns about fairness in sports related to trans people. You want to know how I know? Because fairness in sports only comes up related to trans people. If it was about fairness in sports, there would be a variety of leagues in every kind of sport that was based on your height, your weight, and other characteristics that have nothing to do with your gender expression, identity, with what puberty you went through. Anyone who is trying to have a conversation about trans rights and agrees to do it in the terms that conservatives and transphobes want to have that conversation is a loser. A loser. Incapable of leading. Because I have serious concerns. I have serious concerns about trans people being allowed to live in the world.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. I do think people have serious concerns about biologically male people competing in women's sports. And I do think some of the high profile examples of that illustrate those concerns. The Leah Thomas situation, some of these high school level athletic competitions where you see a biologically male student competing with girls and kind of dominating. It's not to say it's a super common occurrence, but the fact that it happens at all strikes people as absurd. And the other funny thing about this is that many of these people are on the progressive side of the political spectrum. And for a long time, claim to be the follow the science crowd, but when it comes to gender and sex, they're essentially science deniers. They're biology deniers. They're like biology truthers who don't really acknowledge that the biology of human sex exists. And it is funny to me just the number of like objectively untrue statements thrown in here willy-nilly, like, oh, fairness in sports only comes up related to trans people. That's just not true. Any sports fan will tell you. I mean, there's like doping scandals, there's all sorts of concerns about fairness that affect every sport, and down to them regulating, the exact gear you're allowed to use and not use. Fairness is taken very seriously in athletics. It's not just brought up when it comes to trans people. That's totally nonsensical. And then people like this, they don't really seem to realize the difference between distinctions and differences within a category and then categorical distinctions. So like, yes, your height or your weight or other things that vary person to person within a category do contribute to some degree of unfairness. Sports is never going to be perfectly fair. However, the categorical distinctions are much bigger and they exist for a reason. I mean, it would really be interesting. These kinds of people will never really have conversations typically with people like me, but to ask them like, well, okay, then why do women's sports exist as a separate division? Why don't we just all have one team for everything and may the best person make it? We all know because for most sports, in most cases, I'm not going to say in every single sport, in every single case, women wouldn't get to play because there's a categorical chasm in certain physical attributes between males and females. And so conflating that with differences within the categories is just not honest. And it's interesting because this person cites, well, how could you even compromise on any of this when we're concerned about trans people being allowed to live? Now, in one sense, that fear is unfounded because I've covered this before. Thankfully, trans people are not killed or murdered at higher rates than anyone else in America. That is a myth. But I mean, I do understand the argument that like, okay, well, trans adults' lives and ability to be themselves and live how they want is being restricted in some ways. I've always been pretty clear about the fact that I firmly believe in any adult's right to live how will make them happiest, and if that means transitioning, so be it. However, what's so deeply ironic, and we've seen some places roll back and restrict adults' ability to do things, and I don't support that. But what's so ironic about this person talking about trans adults' ability to live is under jeopardy is that it's literally happening because of people like you, right? Like 5-10 years ago, nobody was pushing to control what a trans adult could do, whether they could medically transition or not. But the trans community got hijacked by such extreme activism, including on things like sports, that people decided the whole movement was absurd and lost sympathy for it. So it's like you can't see that people like you are the problem. Sorry, not sorry. It's just the truth. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button while you're at it and make sure you're subscribed. Up next, we're going to react to the wildest TikTok crash out I've seen in a long time from a woke white woman who dumped her long-term boyfriend, who she says she loved dearly, for the most unhinged political reason imaginable. Let's listen to her story and buckle up because this one's a wild one.
I broke up with my boyfriend, someone I love, someone I have known for over 10 years, because he didn't stand up to misogynistic young men when he was given the opportunity. We had just finished watching Adolescence, a miniseries on Netflix that essentially talks about how boys are being more and more radicalized online, how parents aren't paying attention, and how it's really up to men to help solve this problem because they're surely not going to listen to us. So we were walking to the farmer's market, and right behind us were two boys, probably 13 or 14 years old, and they were saying things like, Trump is the best, what has he ever done? He has more followers online, I don't get why no one would like him. And I was seething because my 6'4", handsome, white privileged boyfriend wasn't saying anything. And so finally I stop, I turn around and I get right in their face, and I said, he's a f***ing rapist. He's a certified f***ing rapist. And they go white in the face. Boyfriend? Still just standing there, not saying anything. Once the boys get their bearings, they say something like, Trump is my daddy. Trump is your daddy. And I was furious. I had a full-blown crash out. I took my full morning latte and I smashed it on the ground and I grunted and yelled and walked away. And he's like, what's the matter? You're the matter. Not even the boys so much. Him, because he had an opportunity to stand up against misogyny and he didn't.
Holy shit. Bro dodged an absolute bullet. Oh my god. What do you mean? You claim you love this person, have known your boyfriend for a decade, and yet you dumped him over one social interaction where you didn't like the way he handled it. You know that's insane, right? Like, that's the kind of thing a loving relationship you would potentially work through, talk about, be like, hey, I didn't like the way you handled this. Can we discuss how maybe in the future you could do this? But no, yeah, just crash out and dump your boyfriend for no reason. Now, in this case, I support it because he needs to get as far away from you as possible. And potentially also, like, we need a restraining order keeping this person away from kids because it is absolutely insane for a grown ass adult to crash out on random young boys because they said they like the president of the United States. Like, people are allowed to have different opinions than you. They're allowed to support candidates you don't like, and freaking out on children in public and going like rage mode is not a healthy or normal way to react to simply people expressing an opinion that like half the country believes. So also, I mean, this whole he's a racist thing, that is not some like objective, neutral, verified fact. That is an allegation that has been made that some people believe and some people do not believe. So it's not as if they all agree, yeah, he is, and we don't care. Like, you're clearly grappling with a straw man there. They don't believe that. Now, we could discuss whether they should, but again, having a full blown crash out, throwing your drink into the ground, and losing your crap over something teenagers said is insane to me. I mean, listen, this hasn't happened to me, but say that I was like walking with my boyfriend and some 13-year-old boys like yelled slurs at us or yelled something. I would just keep it moving. I would roll my eyes at them and keep it moving because as an adult, like and to be clear, these kids did nothing like that. Like, they didn't even do anything wrong, really. They're just talking amongst themselves and saying their opinion. But even if literal kids did do something wrong or something upsetting or something offensive, a grown adult should not crash out like this over the words of teenagers. Like, everything about that gives mentally unstable, gives mentally ill, gives I lack the resilience of a functioning adult. It really is clinical levels of derangement we're seeing here. And it's so funny to me because her boyfriend just acted normal. Like he just reacted to this situation how a normal person would react, and you dumped him for it. But again, I support it because bro absolutely dodged a bullet. He absolutely did. Now, while we are on the topic of crazy woke white ladies, let's listen to this bizarre video from another one from this interesting demographic. Take a listen to this.
You know why people of color are more educated than white people? Because people of color are the ones who have been affected most by the government. So it only makes sense that they would educate themselves. Therefore, it makes sense that white people are the most uneducated people out of everyone. Because we've been least affected by shit. So why would we look into the history of the government when it didn't affect us? We're always safe, aren't we? The answer is no to that question, by the way. We're not safe. Educate yourself. Because it is white privilege when you remain uneducated because the shit doesn't affect you directly. And that is a fact.
Oh my God. Please don't tell me to educate myself when you can't even change the batteries in your smoke detector. That is driving me, that noise drives me insane when it's in the background of videos. Oh my goodness. I'm literally crashing out because of that. I'm going to throw my latte on the ground. No, I'm actually not. But I don't know how to engage with this because this is just literally not true. Like, by any statistical measure of educational attainment or like other things, white people are not the least educated demographic. It's just not true. You're just in fantasy land. And if you're just ascribing some like vague notion about how awake to the government they are, that's not really measurable or testable. So how we could prove that one way or another, I don't know. But I just really hate this weird collectivization that happens in this rhetoric that you hear from these woke people. Like, you should not be looking at the world this way, where it's all just like white people this, black people this. Actually, everyone's an individual, and some white people are very educated and very informed, and some white people are deeply ignorant and foolish, and some black people are extremely educated and informed, and some black people have no idea about anything and are totally ignorant. Like, this is these categorical group statements and declarations are not just useless, but are inherently flattening to the reality of the world we live in. And this whole thing about like, well, the government affects white people less. I'm not even sure that's true at a broad level, but it's absolutely not true about any individual. There may be a white person who's been deeply harmed by a specific government policy, and then a black person over here who's never had an issue in their life with anything. So it's just like a totally useless and broken framework for analyzing things, in my view. Not to say there's never a way to discuss race or that these things don't impact our lives in any way. Of course, I'm not saying that, but to do it like this is just so reductive. And then the whole thing, I mean, it comes off, I just can't listen to anything you're saying when the smoke detector is beeping in the background like that. Like, I'm still not over that, bro. I'm not. I'll play you one final video. Discussing white culture. Let's take a listen.
So you're telling me we're not allowed to study whiteness and what white culture is because it's simply just passive aggression, gaslighting, narcissism, not taking accountability for your inventions like racism, but then taking accountability of other people's inventions like the cell phone. And then totally ignoring the fact that y'all were too lazy to be racist in the first place. You weren't even racist. You were just lazy. And then you became racist after we all discovered how lazy you were, and then we got our rights. You created racism to justify your own laziness. You weren't even racist during slavery. You were just a piece of shit. No, wait, but I promise you guys, it's not that deep. It's seriously not that deep. Like, don't think about it that hard.
What the actual heck did I just watch? These people are really, really not okay. They're just not okay. I mean, I will say this. I actually find it concerning how much like pretty explicit anti-white racism there is on the internet, particularly social media and particularly like TikTok. There really is this just open hatred for whiteness and white culture and white people. And I don't really think that's a healthy way to look at the world. Like, I think any white person you meet, you should treat them as an individual and not make assumptions that they're aggressive or passive aggressive because of some sort of collective impression you have of the whites, which is not even really like a meaningful category that you could decide who's in it and who is not in it when you really get down to it. Camille Foster has actually talked about this. He's a writer and a journalist. The racial groups are not actually as clear and unambiguous as many people think. But regardless, the same way that it would be wrong to make some sort of generalization about about black culture and then meet a black person and make a bunch of assumptions about them, yeah, you shouldn't really be doing that to white people either, especially when those assumptions are like insane and baseless. What do you mean white people invented racism? That is not true. Racism and basically all forms of in-group, out-group bias are kind of an inherent aspect of human nature. That tribalism that I think was a survival impulse and perhaps evolutionarily developed, but is one that, you know, because we're thinking people with reason and rationality, or at least some of us are, we're able to overcome with those critical thinking skills and realize that it's actually not like that anymore and doesn't have to be. And thankfully, we can all treat each other as individuals and get along and not necessarily devolve into our tribes or whatever. But people like this really do sound like they sound very similar to the alt-right, white nationalists, racists. The way they talk about black people is the same way that people like this talk about white people. And I think it's all awful. I think it's all grotesque. And I think it's all just dividing our country and pitting people against each other in the worst way imaginable. But other than that, she's doing amazing. What do you guys think of all these crazy TikTok videos? Let me know which one of these was your favorite. Least favorite? I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button while you're at it. Make sure you're subscribed. Remember to check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll talk again real soon.